soul of man, or the real self, which is man, is a compound, individualized, self-conscious projection of harmonious vibrations, proceeding from the infinite source of all energy and being therefore eternal. In penetrating into the material world, the soul attracts from its surroundings, air, water, earth, etc., all the necessary elements to construct a vehicle or body for its expression on this earth plane. After it has expressed itself on this earth plane for a sufficient length of time, the great law calls it to proceed further to do some other work. The soul leaves its body, which, bereft of its cohesive power, disintegrates and gives back to the native elements the materials of which it has been constituted. Here we have again the soul of man, which means the inner self, the real self, the manifestation, the ray of the Absolute, called also the Son of God, and which is an individualized compound projection of harmonious, self-conscious vibrations. When there was given, in the first lesson, a definition of what man is, a different wording was used because it was approached from the point of view of the Absolute, where even vibrations were not mentioned as being a two-material concept. But now the same subject is taken up from the point of view of the science of vibrations, and in a way vibrations are very tangible things, tangible as far as their perceptibility is concerned. The soul is a compound unit of these vibrations. That is, all the infinite varieties of vibrations of the Absolute, focused in an infinite number of individual points, are souls, conscious, harmonious, individual projections of self-consciousness, proceeding from the infinite source of all vibration and being therefore eternal, because they have eternally the nature of their Father, the great principle. When these souls, these aggregated self-conscious vibrations, focused in individual points, penetrate into this material world in order to have a body, a material vehicle, through which to express themselves on this plane, they attract, the force of attraction being their inherent quality, around themselves all the different minute electrons, atoms, and so forth, and build with those elements a body. That is done, as we all know, through the mother by means of gestation. The soul which is to be incarnated sends its vibrations into the mother's womb. There it touches, in the female egg, a unit of the male seed which had penetrated there. From there the life begins to unfold and the soul to express itself more and more through that little seed, combining its own activities with those of the mother, and thus forming little by little the body which it will call its own. The mother provides the building material through breathing, eating, and so forth, and feeds the body of the future child. And the soul continually attracts around its own activities the material elements provided by the mother, thus forming its future body. During that physical union between men and women, the main object of which is the conception of another being, some of the strongest physical, mental, and emotional vibrations are brought forth. In that moment is determined what kind of a soul shall be incarnated in the mother's womb. Like attracts like. If the vibrations of the two parents are harmonious and of a high rate, a highly evolved soul will be attracted. If, on the contrary, both parties, or even one, will manifest vibrations of disharmony, vibrations of a low rate, a soul whose vibrations correspond to that rate will be thus attracted. Therefore it is most essential that the prospective parents consider that bodily union as something very sacred and pure, and that they perform it with a higher object in mind than the mere gratification of a carnal appetite. It must be a glorious hymn of love, in which every fiber of their triune being, body, mind, and soul, sends out its most perfect vibrations. No physical union should ever be tolerated when the two parties are not in complete harmony with each other at that moment, else most disastrous effects will descend upon the child born of such a disharmonious union. The soul which incarnates is not within the seed. It only overshadows it, combines its individual life force with that of the seed, thus making the seed grow and become the channel for its expression on this earth plane. When the 9 months of gestation are over, the body is completely formed and the child is born and becomes a separate entity. The soul then acts through the child as through a separate, individual channel, not needing the mother anymore. The soul expresses through the body of the child all its functions only when the child reaches the age of puberty and is ready for procreation. When the soul has expressed through the body all its functions, even the function of procreation, which is a divine quality, and one of the greatest the soul possesses, then only is it fully equipped to fulfill properly its mission on this earth. The soul then continually expresses itself through that body, the vehicle built by it for its own use. The material body is the instrument, the channel, through which the soul contacts the outer world and manifests itself and is perceptible on this material plane. When the time comes for the soul to go to another plane to work there, it happens so that through circumstances, the individual having become sick or old, the soul leaves the body. And as soon as it abandons the body, the latter, being no longer held together by the cohesive power, the force of attraction inherent in the soul, begins to disintegrate, to give back to the elements the materials of which it has been formed. There are the words of the Bible: "Dust thou art, and to dust thou shalt return. Out of dust was the body created, and to dust does it return." Out of invisible little particles is formed the material body, sometimes a very beautiful body, but when the soul goes away, that body reverts back to dust. Thus we see that the body really returns to its primitive condition of simple elements. Therefore, when we lose somebody on this plane, we should never mourn over the body which was dear to us as the visible manifestation of the soul we love. That body is just as outworn as an old suit of clothes. It may be a remembrance to us, but it is a worn-out garment, which the soul has replaced with another garment much more beautiful. We see continually in nature this changing of bodies. Let us take the caterpillar as an example. The caterpillar dies as a caterpillar, becomes a chrysalis. The soul of the caterpillar is no longer satisfied to crawl on the ground. It wants to fly. By and by that consciousness unfolds in it, and when it has unfolded itself perfectly, and has created all the necessary apparatus to be able to fly, the chrysalis bursts and the butterfly comes out. That is why the butterfly is considered the symbol of the soul which frees itself from the old body. The soul, by the successive putting on and leaving off of its different bodies, creates more and more perfect vehicles for its expression, until it finally reaches a stage where its body becomes as perfect and indestructible as is the soul itself. When we are born again, we start life anew. We have within us all our past experiences, although most of us are not conscious of it. Even those who are the most advanced have to work hard for a number of years in order to become fully conscious of their own knowledge. It took Jesus over 30 years before he was able to unfold within himself all that was needed for his divine mission. And yet he knew, from the very day when he entered this material plane, that he was to save the world. Tradition says that he went into the Ephesian schools to study the science of being. That scientific study, that period of inner development, was necessary in order to bring back to him in his material embodiment that which he already knew from eternity. If we consciously express the laws of harmony now, we shall be able to prolong our lives, and especially we shall be able to keep to the very limit of our days a strong body. A body strong not only in its activities, but also young and harmonious in form. If people would live as Jesus did, they would not need to die. They would raise their vibrations higher and higher until finally they would be translated into another plane, as were Jesus, Elijah, Enoch, and others, thus overcoming the last enemy, death. It is not the changing of one body for another that makes people fear death. It is the pain connected with it, because most people suffer terribly when those ties between soul and body are severed. It is also an acute mental agony, especially for those who love life and yet do not believe in a life hereafter. And that is why, after all, the process of dying is such a sad thing. When our mental attitude towards it will have changed, then our physical experience of that transition will also be greatly modified, and we will not fear it any longer. On the contrary, the absolute certainty that we are growing into a better, finer body, raising us into a higher condition, will make us almost desire that change. The human body is a current continually renewed by the assimilation of gases through breathing and the feeding up the molecules, directed, organized, governed by the immaterial force which animates it and which is called the soul. The previous proposition simply gave us man born, the soul incarnated, manifesting itself through a material body. It gave us the process of that incarnation, the process of building the body, but it did not say how it will keep the body, how it will live in that body. This proposition explains that. It says the body is a current, which is scientifically correct. It is a current of vibrations, a current of life continually flowing through us. That vital current which flows through the nerves, through the bones, and through every cell in the body. That current, aggregated, outlined, is the body itself. And that current is kept alive first of all through breathing, or the assimilation of gases. The gases feed that current. We usually think that the feeding of our body by means of the mouth and through the stomach is the most important. But this is not so at all. In the year 1920, the mayor of Cork, McSwiney, showed that he could live a very long period, approximately 76 days, without eating, yet he could not have lived 5 minutes without breathing. That proves how much more important breathing is than the actual material food. People of today realize that more and more, and that is why there are so many different systems of scientific breathing. Some of them are exceedingly good. To breathe properly, that is, to breath scientifically, is one of the very important things for us to know in order to keep strong and healthy. Yet, unfortunately, our knowledge of that is very limited. Most human beings do not know at all how to breathe properly. They live such an artificial life that even that most essential function of the body is undeveloped. There are different kinds of systems of breathing. The best are those which are evolved in the very country where they are to be used. That is why the Oriental systems do not suit so well the Western people, and vice versa. There are, throughout the world, a great number of systems of diet. One of the best, up to the present, is considered that of Horace Fletcher, an American. If people would follow Fletcher's or a similar system, they would never know what stomach trouble is, and also there would be no shortage of food, because he proved scientifically that people could eat half of what they eat now and yet be stronger and healthier. It is only necessary to masticate the food properly. The digesting of the food is done first by the mouth, then by the stomach. When the food is broken to pieces through mastication, a certain amount of energy is thus liberated, absorbed by the mucuses of the mouth and conveyed directly to the brain, which is therefore the first to receive life force in that liberated condition. The masticated food is then sent through the alimentary canal to the stomach, which starts its digestion. In order to digest the food properly, the stomach produces gastric juices, whose chemical qualities are so powerful that they can dissolve almost anything they come in contact with. The gastric juices produced by the stomach are of a different kind for each food. Therefore, in dietetics, a simple food is always advisable in larger quantities, more of one kind, and not so many different kinds combined. For each kind of food we absorb, the stomach must produce the corresponding gastric juice. Suppose there is a dish composed of 6 or 7 ingredients. Then the stomach has to produce at the same time 6 or 7 different gastric juices, which naturally it cannot do, because it can produce only one kind of juice at a time. Not being able to solve the problem in a satisfactory way, it loses its head, and the losing of the stomach's head means indigestion. Therefore, people who eat very complicated food usually discover that in their older days they can hardly eat any food at all. Those who live on simple food, on the contrary, even if they become very old, still keep their stomachs in a fine condition to the very end, because they never gave to their stomachs work which that organ could not do properly. Fresh, well-prepared hot simple food, in a sufficient quantity, especially vegetables and fruits, well masticated, is all anyone needs to ensure proper digestion. The current of life force is therefore also fed by the chemical reaction, called the burning process, which is produced by the digestion of the food. That is what is meant by the feeding of the molecules, a work which is all done, the current directed, properly organized, and governed by that invisible, immaterial, individualized, conscious force, which we call the soul. Even there, in that material body, the dominant power is not the visible body, but that invisible entity which is underlying, governing and sustaining it, the soul. It is also systematically arranged that it seems to work automatically. There is nothing more wonderful and beautiful on this path plane than a perfect human body, the temple of the living God, as an apostle calls it. The human body, as material as it may appear to us, is but a harmonious group formed by the immaterial forces of the soul. This last proposition, which closes the cycle of the body, seems very much like the first, in which it was stated that the basis of man's existence and identity is the soul, and the body is but a transitory condition or expression of the soul's present activities. Those two propositions appear to be alike, yet they are not. The first one refers to a body. It does not state a material body. It mentions only a body. It could just as well be a mental body, an astral body, or a spiritual body. This last proposition applies specifically to a material body, which, material as it may appear to us, is after all but a harmonious group of cells, of molecules, of atoms, of electrons, of vibrations, formed by the immaterial forces of the soul, and held together by the law of attraction. The invisible forces of the soul have molded that visible form, that living statue, called a human body. And these forces are also permeating it, sustaining it, and are the very substance of that body. After the very deepest point of involution has been reached, where one seems to be at the bottom of matter in its densest aspect, the scientific fact is discovered that even there it is not the so-called material body which is the governing power, but the soul which has formed that body through its own activities. And as the soul has formed it, so can the soul also modify and change, even now and here, on this material plane, this body of ours. In other words, reaching the bottom of matter, we find there spirit. That is, spirit is everywhere. What applies to the human body also applies to any other body, to the bodies of animals, plants, minerals and gases. They are all formed in the same way, according to the same principle, the same law as human bodies. The reason why only the human soul and body are mentioned is because they are the highest in nature. Therefore, naturally, when one speaks of the highest, the lesser is also included in it. Jesus, in his Sermon on the Mount, did not mention that we should love animals, plants, and so forth. As far as we know, he very seldom even referred to them, because he understood that if we loved man, the highest, naturally we would love everything below. Why then did Buddha teach such wonderful respect to all nature? He lived in a country where animal and plant life reached an extraordinary development. It expressed itself in most cases in very beautiful forms and became a very important part in the daily life of the people. Buddha taught his fellow beings to love as their younger brothers all those entities belonging to the different kingdoms of nature, to respect their lives. Thus he prepared his followers to love better their own fellow men, the highest manifestation in nature. Great teachings always make the best practical use of their immediate surroundings, be it of place or of time. They are always attuned to the period in which they are given, so as to make the process of evolution as easy as possible. Jesus, when he was giving his teachings, said to his disciples, "Many things have I to tell you, but you cannot bear them now." In spite of being continually with him, his disciples could not understand all of his teachings, because they were not ready. When Krishna, who lived long before Buddha, came to proclaim the gospel of truth, he did not speak about nature in the way Buddha spoke. His teachings remind one much more of those of Jesus. Why? Because it was again a different period in which he lived. That period of humanity's evolution required teachings which appear to be more similar to the teachings of Jesus than those of Buddha. The same was with Vishnu. Yet Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, and Vishnu are one, because there is only one Savior of the world, who comes to this earth at different periods, under different names, as a different personality. The eternal individuality back of all those personalities was, is, and ever will be the same one. Vishnu, Krishna, and Buddha were just as much saviors of the world as was Jesus, and as there cannot be several saviors, they must all be one eternal Savior, love divine, for the protection of the good, for the destruction of evildoers. I am born from age to age is the message of love to suffering humanity. Lesson 3. 1. What is matter? Matter is certain vibratory phenomena perceptible through the senses. It is by nature changeable. 2. What is the origin of matter? Primal energy is the noumenon, or basis, from which the phenomenon called matter originated. 3. What is the nature of matter? It is essentially elusive. It is called the great illusion. 4. What are its aspects? Solid, liquid, and gaseous form. 5. What are its qualities? Weight, density, volume. 6. What is now the smallest known particle of matter? The electron. 7. How many kinds of electrons are there? 2. The positive, male, and the negative, female, electrons. 8. What is an electron? An electron is a tiny sphere, rotating on its own axis, and made of pure, condensed primal energy. 9. How is an electron formed? Individual units of vibrations of primal energy, in rotating around their own axes, become condensed and form a microscopical sphere called an electron. 10. What is an atom? An aggregation of electrons, a planetary system in miniature. 11. What is taken as the unit of atomic weight? An atom of hydrogen, which has only 2 electrons, a positive one around which revolves a negative. What is a molecule? It is an aggregation of atoms. Molecules constitute all material elements. 13. What determines the weight and the hardness of a material element? the number of electrons in an atom of it. In other words, the amount of condensed energy determines the qualities of the element. 14. What other quality does matter possess? It is radioactive. It emanates primal energy. 13. What is the cause of radioactivity? The disintegration of matter, the release of primal energy contained in it. 16. Are all material elements radioactive? Yes. 17. Which is the most radioactive so far as is known now? Radium. 18. What determines the preciousness of an element? The amount of condensed energy contained in it. 19. What is the difference between a noble individual and a common one? An individual of noble character expresses his energies on a higher plane, in stronger, higher vibrations than others, and is consequently of more value to humanity. What is the scientific definition of matter? Matter is but the consciousness of effects produced on the senses by various manifestations of primal energy. Therefore, matter is only a state of consciousness, the present manner in which those effects are perceived. 21. What is the human body? It is an aggregation of vibrations in different degrees of condensation. It is a dynamic center. 22. On what principle is the universe built? On the same principle as is formed the electron through condensation of primal energy. 23. What is the basis of the visible universe? Invisible primal energy. 24. What is the fundamental law of the universe? The great law of attraction which governs the whole universe and is the basis of eternal harmony. 25. Are the words attraction and love synonymous? They are. Attraction is the scientific name for love. 26. What is the connecting link between the component parts of the universe, worlds, planets, etc.? The great law of attraction, which is exercised instantaneously and eternally throughout all space. 27. What is the difference between the word world and the word universe? There is but one limitless and eternal universe, which is made up of an infinite number of worlds. 28. What is our Earth? A beautiful star, floating in that infinite universe. 29. What is man's eternal privilege and duty? The fulfilling of the law of love. 30. Why is primal energy indestructible? Because it is the effect of an indestructible cause, the great principle itself. 31. What is substance, and why is it indestructible? Substance is the first condensation of primal energy. Being made of an indestructible element, primal energy, it is also indestructible. 32. Why is the universe indestructible? Because its basic elements, primal energy, substance, cosmic intelligence, and the law of attraction are indestructible. 33. What is the soul, and why is it indestructible? Souls are individualized self-projections of the unmanifest into substance. They are eternal because they are the manifestations of the great principle itself. 34. Is the soul individual? Yes. 39. What is the difference between individuality and personality? Individuality is man's eternal identity. Personality is but a transitory human concept of that individuality. 36. What is the basis of man's existence and identity? The soul. 37. What is the body? The body is the aggregated manifestations of the soul's activities, outwardly outlined. 38. Does the body change? Yes. The body is modified to conform to the changing activities of the soul. 39. How often is the body renewed? Every 1 to 7 years, according to the individual. 40. Shall we always have some kind of a body? Yes, because the body is the proof of the existence of the soul. 41. Has the soul only a material body? No. It evolves bodies corresponding to its different stages of evolution. What is the difference between the soul of man, his real self, and man himself? Known. 43. How does the soul incarnate itself on the material plane? It attracts from its surroundings air, water, earth, etc., all the elements necessary to construct a vehicle, or body, for its expression on this earth plane. 44. Through what medium does that incarnation take place? Through the human mother, by the process of gestation. 45. What attracts the soul which is to be incarnated? The extraordinarily strong vibrations projected by the parents during their physical union. 46. Why is it important that such physical union should be something sacred, inspired by the highest emotions? Because of its immediate effect on the soul to be incarnated. 47. Is the soul which incarnates contained in the seed? No, it only overshadows it. 48. When does the soul express all its functions through the body of the child? When the child reaches the age of puberty and is ready for procreation. 49. Is procreation a quality of matter or of spirit? Of spirit. 50. Why does the body die? Because the soul withdraws from it, being attracted to a different plane, where it will have to do some other work. 51. What becomes of the body? It disintegrates, being bereft of its cohesive power which resides in the soul and returns to its native elements, out of which it has been formed. 52. Explain the statement, "Dust thou art, and to dust thou shalt return." According to material science, it is the history of matter itself. 53. Is the soul reincarnated again? Yes, in order to learn its lessons. 54. Will reincarnation ever stop? Yes, when the soul has learned all its lessons, and will have realized its eternal spiritual status and its oneness with the great principle. There is no reincarnation on the spiritual plane. 55. What is the human body? It is a current continually renewed by the assimilation of gases through breathing and the feeding of the molecules. Which is first in importance, breathing or eating? Breathing. 57. What are the advantages of scientific, rhythmic breathing? It invigorates and purifies the body and stimulates all its activities. 58. Why should food be properly masticated? In order, first, to release the primal energy by breaking up the atoms of the food, and second, to transform the food being masticated into a homogeneous mass which will simplify the work of digestion for the stomach. 59. Why is the simple food preferable to the complicated? Because the simple food, even if of coarse quality, and taken in large quantities, is more easily digested by the stomach than a complicated food. 60. What is the invisible power which is directing, organizing and governing all activities of the human body? The soul. 61. Is the human body material? No, it is only a harmonious group of condensed vibrations, formed by the immaterial forces of the soul, and held together by the law of attraction. 62. When one has reached the densest aspect of matter, the bottom of involution, what does one discover? That spirit, the most immaterial thing that we know of, is at the bottom of it. As spirit is also at the top of matter, the logical conclusion to be drawn is that spirit is everywhere. 63. Do those propositions concerning the human soul and body apply also to the souls and bodies of animals, plants, minerals, etc.? Yes. 64. Why did Buddha teach such great love for nature? Because he knew that everything in nature is a manifestation of the great principle. and is therefore closely related to man. 65. Why did Jesus, in his teachings, scarcely ever refer to nature? Because if human beings will love their fellow men, they cannot help but love nature also. Who can do more can do less. 66. What is the message of love to suffering humanity? For the protection of the good, for the destruction of evildoers, I am born from age to age.